Okay, guys. Whenever you're ready.
Anytime?
Yeah.
Ready.
Okay, well, Herb, it's good to be talking with you again after this long time. And I was reminding you at lunch today that the year that you were AAPOR president was my first year on council, and at that time you took me aside and told me that everybody on council has to have a job, and you were going to assign me a job, and you did. But I can't remember what it is.
I can't remember what it was either. Yeah.
So let's kind of go back there, because we talk a little bit about the kind of things that AAPOR would be interested in. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how your career developed and how you happened to be attracted to AAPOR and became an AAPOR member.
A very convoluted story. I'll try and make it brief. I grew up to be I wanted to join the Air Force to be a combat pilot. This was way back in late 30s. And so when I got out of high school, I went to the Air Force recruiting operation. They said, well, you have to have 2 years of college. Oh, all right. So I went to the nearest college, which was City College. And that's where I discovered psychology and Gardner Murphy and Eugene Hartley and the whole wonderful faculty in the City College Psychology Department. And Gene Hartley he said to me, Herb, there's a new outfit that's getting started. He said, I know you're interested in SPICY, Society for the Psychological Study of Social Issues. That was sort of a predate to and it's called AAPOR, and they're having a once-a-year convention. I said, he's going to go. I should go too. You know, if I'm going to graduate and get into applied research. So I went to Lake Forest, Illinois, and I saw a lot of people who are friends now. And I saw Lattersfeld and Merton and faculty people, and it was very impressive. It was a very frolicsome meeting. The boys were all playing. Ben Gedlisher ran the pool and billiards table, and it was an all-night affair to play pool there. Paul Sheetsley and someone else ran the poker thing all night long. And various dignitaries who now would be embarrassed to hear wandered in and out, adorned with lipstick where it shouldn't be and stuff like that. So it was a very frolicsome meeting. Well, here's where the boys have fun, even if they're dignified professors. But the meetings were very good, and I joined, and I came ever since. It was the one outfit I knew, except for SPICY, that combined a professional interest with a particular discipline, or two disciplines, and with a concern for social issues. In those days, the program was half full, maybe more, with war, peace, integration, you have it. Not methodology. So it was very exciting, and I became a regular member. And it stayed that way for many years. Then it gradually got overtaken by commercial interests and emphasis on measurement and methodology. That got to be a little tiresome after a while. But SPICY was the forerunner. There was some overlap with Division 23 of the American Psychological Association, Division of Consumer Psychology. I was president there and was with them for many years, but AAPOR was still more exciting because of the social issues content, which APA didn't have.
So about when was this? About what year was this that you...
Oh, boy. About 52. The first meeting was at 50. At Eaglesmere, or the founding meeting.
Okay.
I missed that one. I went to the next one. The first official since being founded. And that was 50.
Was it 50?
Yeah.
Okay.
I stopped going a few years ago because, again, now there was too much methodology again.
You know, it's funny, it goes in waves.
Yeah.
I remember the content papers. I remember Jack Ellenson and his group would always have a health symposium.
Yes, right.
Report on the work that they had done. So it was utilizing research methods for those purposes. And then it did change, and I think maybe it may have swung a little bit too much the other way for a while.
I think so. Part of it, however, was based on survey results conducted by AAPOR. That is to say, a committee headed by that lady who was on the board of trustees, who's been there forever. Anyway, she did a survey to find out what members wanted to have more and less of in the forthcoming content. And especially among the young people, there's a great emphasis on more methodology. And that got communicated to the program committee, and that was, for me, the demise of AAPOR. So
while we're on that, in that area, think about the culture of AAPOR then. What was it like?
I was just thinking that most of my friends, even today, are old AAPOR buddies. And these were a group of people in social psychology, sociology, journalism, who spanned all these interests and came to the East or to Chicago and got jobs in advertising agencies or corporations. And there's a kind of a clique there. I thought of it as applied psychology. They thought of it as applied sociology. Mm-hmm. But Leo, I met... In fact, when I first got out of the Air Force and wanted a job in New York City, I thought I'd go into business industry. I think I made 150 interviews with prospective employers. I decided to do both a survey of what kind the jobs were like and a search for a personal job for me. And many of my friends I met on that survey. I met Leo, who's then at Standard Oil. I met Bud, I forget the second name. But I met a lot of the people then, which I still know today. And over the years, they became the leading members of the research community in New York and Chicago. And now the culture of AAPOR, well, I told you, I think, before that it was kind of frolicsome, which in its mildest form meant that you never go to bed. So if you wanted to have bull sessions all night, even on very sanctified problems, you could do it. So you didn't go to bed. We had dancing at the Hotel Sagamore. After midnight, the regular band left. Charlie Raymond sat down at the piano. Oh, yeah. I took over the drums, if you can believe it. And we had dancing until 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's the way it went. And we had those wonderful midnight suppers, Chinese smorgasbords, and the parade of the flags led by Sue Mendelson. Yeah. And it was very warm and friendly. There were many romances. There were many job aspects of these friendships, and a great deal of publishing activity, books and articles. It was a very vibrant group. And yet it didn't owe its loyalty to any one base, like the APA or some corporate sponsor, or to a field of applied research in the commercial world. It was free for all, commercial, academic, and whatnot. And each year they would make a little inventory of what the percentage of academic and commercial types were attending. And the objective was to have a balance between the two. But that got out of hand, as it always does. And but people would go there. The real research people go there looking for jobs. There was a job market there. Yeah, job market. And a publication market and a research grant market. It was a very busy, professionally busy place. And you could spend your whole career deciding where you would be trained and where you would work and where you would teach and where would you retire, all based on your contacts and information and interest base in AAPOR. So it was a cradle-to-grave experience.
And one vestige of this socializing that you were talking about a moment ago is that even today at AAPOR meetings, there's still a line that says applied probability for the last night after the festivities.
Yes.
And so that goes on. But I do remember a lot more socializing and a lot more interaction, fun interaction.
We had a singing
Maybe
club.
I'm just out of it now. That's all.
I still see Dick Mazel, and we end up at the evening singing wherever we are.
Yeah.
He used to lead the song.
The sing-alongs.
The sing-alongs. I took children there. I think Bud Roper and I each took a dog there. I took a pointer. He took a poodle. We took our dogs. The dogs were friendly and played. This was at the Sagamore. And there was a hubbub of activity around election time, and we always had Roper or somebody forecasting the election or saying something interesting about the forthcoming election.
Well, Lou Harris one famous year.
Oh, well, then there were rivalries, some of which were commercial, some of which were ethical. But let's not go into that. The Standards Committee held a very sensitive spot in AAPOR because people were concerned about standards, and there was beginning to be a lot of violation of standards. Not like today where the violation is wholesale. I mean, the Standards Committee today would shoot itself. But in those days, there were fractions here and there, and there was action and concern and committees and what are we going to do about this and what are we going to do about that with particular malfeasance in mind. And it kept things, I was impressed with that. I think most people were. That there really was a profession of public opinion research. What is a profession? Well, Bob Merton used to say that a profession is a group wherein the standards of right and wrong supersede those of your employer or your benefactor. And that was a profession. We were that kind of profession. And people got really upset when standards were violated.
Moving from AAPOR as it was then to the field a little more, what do you see as some of the changes that have been taking place in public opinion research, and maybe you could evaluate a little bit of that for us?
Well, I think the internationalization of business and politics brings the whole world under the microscope, so to speak. And I think we're going to hear a lot more about public opinion in different cultures. And with respect to our political problems, I'm not very optimistic about how things are going because the questions being asked in so many places are so artificial or selected so arbitrarily or not pre-tested and misconceived and misdefined. It's a big, profitable mess. And some of our professionally least qualified people have become commercially the most successful. That happens in many industries, and it's aggravating. There have got to be some fallouts from the new emphasis on language training, which is quite a problem. But I haven't been into that. I don't think I did anything in international research. Well, yes, but smaller studies. I did a 5-country study of why people became communists, what it was like, and how it was after they left. In the United States, France, England, Italy, Great Britain. I had to train people from those countries to come over here and watch me interview, so they accomplished the same thing, but there wasn't a question there. That was a long time ago. I guess the experience of the Indian telephone answerers is going to be the most important event in this field. That is, where you pick up the phone to make a purchase at Sears Roebuck, and some girl in Bombay answers the phone and takes care of your order. And
I want to tell you, I got a call from Dell Computer because I had called them about some problems with their equipment. And I got a call from someone who first started asking questions about satisfaction and then said, I'm going to give you a different number. And I thought it was almost strange when she said, and on this number, you will be able to understand the people at the other end of the line. They will speak clear English. And I had occasion to use that line yesterday, and my God, it was like night and day. I mean, before that, I was calling Bangalore or wherever it is all the time, and Bangalore. And I really had trouble understanding those people. So who knows how that movement is going. Well, let's get back to Krugman.
all right.
I noticed that a lot of your early career after your degree was spent at Marplan, and following Marplan, I believe you went to General Electric. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what it was like to be an opinion researcher and psychologist at Marplan, and then what it was like at General Electric.
All right. I went to Marplan because they wanted someone who could represent physiological research in professionally legitimate ways. They had had various kinds of laboratory research done for them, but some of it was questionable validity. So I did a lot of the advertising research with emphasis on physiological measures like eye movement, pupil dilation, flicker fusion, and so on and so forth. And finally, brainwaves. This was a side interest. My main problem was working for the major clients on anything they had, but that was the distinctive part of my work at Marplan. And since I was pretty much left to decide what to do in that area, I occasionally published articles, and I tried to present the field to psychologists who read those journals for what it was. So I had a laboratory, I had contacts with the military proving grounds at Aberdeen, where I think you were on a trip that we arranged, and Norman Mackler at Stanford. We did a lot of very interesting physiological research, which I thought was fun. I didn't regard this as a career, but as long as my employers would let me do it, I'll do it. And I got funds and the opportunity to do things that academics didn't yet get to do. The public opinion research part of Marplan was mainly advertising research, impact of campaigns, and pre-testing of commercials. Not much straight public opinion research, although the large campaign evaluations had some of those aspects. I was, as a Marplan designee, I was research director for Nelson Rockefeller's TV commercial selection for his run for governor, his run for governor. And we did a lot of, he had some preliminary research done for him by Cantrell suggesting what topics would be good to have used in advertising. We turned these topics into full-fledged commercials, not storyboards, which I hated, and not simulated I wanted the real thing. I always voted for the real thing, although it's more expensive. So we made 24 commercials that were ready to go on the air. As far as the people who made them, these are for the air. This is no laboratory thing. And then we put them all on the air across New York State in different places and did pre-post and other focus interviews, all kinds of studies of them. And there was one clear winner. It was the water pollution issue, which was his strongest and most successful issue. A very commercial, very interesting commercial. Two fish coughing and meeting each other underwater. Oh, this is terrible, this pollution. Don't worry, Governor Rockefeller is going to do something about it. He's going to clean up the Hudson River. Oh, thank goodness, thank goodness. That was the best commercial. And it resonated all up and down the thruway and into the country and got the rural vote and the city vote and everything. And so he won. He was very nice. That was an exciting thing, that his group. He was really quite an impressive guy. As a manager, as an intellect, as a person. I love the way he died. But that's another story.
We all like to die like that.
Yeah. Oh, well. So, political research periodically. I didn't do anything for Lyndon Johnson, I don't think. I think the only political research I did was for Rockefeller, until I got into international political research with the communist studies, to report those. They weren't public opinion studies, really. They were large-scale interview studies, 500 interviews with ex-communists. So there I became a consultant to the State Department Office of Intelligence Research. And in my Air Force Reserve work, I was assigned to a psychological warfare group within the Human Resources Research Institute or some damn thing. Fred Williams was my contact there, if you remember Fred. Mm-hmm. So by being part of those groups as a consultant, they absorbed whatever research we did up at. The project was a Yale project, with Gabriel Almond as the titular head. Oh, yeah. After a while, because we had differences with the new head of Yale, was it Griswold? One of the new deans of Yale University didn't like team research. He wanted scholarly research. And since we were a center of research, a bureau, so to speak, we went over to Princeton and switched from being the Institute for Social Research to the Center for International Studies. And that led to some other international studies, but always had language problems when we really wanted to do more. I think we lost the Vietnam War right at the beginning there because our two Southeast Asia members of the staff of the Yale Institute of International Studies, and there are only about 16 on the staff, were both killed in the same year, a few years before Vietnam. They were experts in Southeast Asia. And one was killed with hand grenades thrown at his Jeep while he was in Burma. The other was run down on Christmas Eve in front of his house. But we lost those two experts. And in those days, and in terms of the effect on the war, each expert was a major asset because they knew so much.
This, as you describe it, the career sounds like a very satisfying career. Great variety, yes. Interesting projects, a lot of initiative on your part as to what you would study.
Yes.
Why did you move on to General Electric?
The same reason. I knew General Electric because I had done their community and plant attitude surveys when I was at Richardson Bell's Henry Company. And I knew GE very well. And I knew that they were different because I had other clients too, Westinghouse, whatever. GE was a gentleman's company in those days. Very gentlemanly. And if you had a profession, you were encouraged to go ahead in your profession, even if it wasn't directly company related. So they said, all right, we want a public opinion research director. The budget's running $1 million or $2 million. And I said, well, that's an adequate budget. But tell me, can I have a budget for fooling around in the lab to do research I want to do? absolutely, be our guest. Now, under Jack Welch, you could never do that. But under Reg Jones, you could. And I often went up to Schenectady to the R&D labs, because that was the home of GE in those days. Scientists. Right. Since then, they have never heard of research and development. Well, that's not quite true. But I quickly sensed that I could have my own research budget and still have a huge public opinion research budget in the area of corporate attitudes and attitudes towards companies and working and all these issues. And so I went, and it was great. And in the physiological lab, that's where I did studies on brain research, television and print versus print, TV slow waves, print fast waves. It was GE money. The money went finally to a College of Medical Sciences on Fifth Avenue, but and if they saw I was giving a paper on one of these arcane to them subjects in Austin or Paris or anywhere, they thought that's wonderful. GE, it's a great company, we sponsor wonderful things, and progress is our most important product. It was then. And then there were some very big problems. GE was getting into supersonic transport flight via the big engines they were making. And they were very big in nuclear plant construction. And these were public issues. And so I had to report to them, I'm sorry, but we're losing the fight to protect nuclear plants because of fears and this and that. Public support is going down, down, down. So they went out of that business. Same with SSTs. The public isn't right, but they're mistakenly concerned about A, B, C. And we got out of that business, just kept the engines. There were big issues in those days. Senator Proxmire called the head of our aircraft engine division a liar in public. So this guy, who was a stubborn German, went around and built the engine that Proxmire said was unbuildable. And most of half the jet engines today in large commercial airliners are GE engines, or they're Rolls-Royce. So it was interesting to be in on these important decisions, and I felt welcomed and important, and my boss would take my reports to the board of directors meeting, or he would say, you come with me this time, because I think I can't handle all the questions. So the board knew me, and every 4 months, every 3 months, I put out a report based on 3,000 interviews, national samples of adults, and a separate sample of college students in the United States. And for 15 years, I tracked all issues of concern to GE, with a special emphasis on the components of what we call the corporate image, which factor analyze adds up to a number of different things. And Jones would go to Washington. He said, look, I'm going to see the defense secretary tomorrow. Do you have anything you want me to tell him? And I would keep telling him for years and years the country is concerned about our strength, our weakening defense posture. And so he'd report that. Now, to give Jack Welch his credit, I also reported, as in terms of the elements of the GE image, that the product quality image had been deteriorating for many years. There it was, 4 times a year. I said, look, it's still going down. And no one did anything about it. Now, Jack Welch, whatever else he did, he seized on the right spear, the right weapon. And his whole remodeling of the structure of the company was an effort, avowedly, to increase the reputation for product quality, which it did. So there are many good things you can attribute to Jack Welch, but which I don't, not too many of them, but one is he must have been a pretty good reader of those public opinion chart reports, because there it was in black and white, and I still have the reports.
In those days, when you measured product quality, was it by consumer satisfaction, or what was the basis for drawing those kind of conclusions?
We did a comparison-type rating study. We'd say, which one of these 5 companies has the best quality products? And we'd have GE mixed in with 4 others. And the same for if there's a best place to work, and the same for the best planned communities to live in, and so forth. And we rotate these different companies. We never asked, what do you think of GE? It was always a comparative rating, psychologists at work. And we had marvelous reliability and so forth, and could compute probability errors, that others couldn't. And so the questions were based on psychological theory, the structure of the questions. No one else did that. Also, we replicated all the samples, all the work. We did all the statistics twice. That's an old military habit I got into. Very expensive. I was the most expensive guy you could use because my habits were military ingrained. All the work we did in the Air Force, involving large-scale statistics, we did twice with separate groups of people running dozens of Marsh and Friedan calculators.
Yeah, right.
Everything twice. So I did some of that at first in industry. They said, Herbert, you can't do this much expense. We can't do. Rolls-Royces are fine, but we can't repeat it. But we came close to it, though, with replicated statistics.
What you described sounds almost like an idyllic situation.
Was.
And what about the abrasiveness? I mean,
Which abrasiveness?
Well, what I mean is these people are there to improve stockholder return. They're there for bottom line results. Weren't there times when the interface between what you
Remember,
did
the first thing I said
they...
when I started talking about GE was that they're a company of gentlemen. Gentlemen. And everyone was very respectful of one another, and giving them their due for what they had done, asking questions. There was no abrasiveness. Sure, we wanted to raise the stock image, and we did surveys of share owners. We did surveys of stock brokers. We did surveys of all kinds of people's attitudes toward the stock and up and down. Even gave some studies to Yankelowitz to do of share owners, to have an outside person do it. No, we studied all of that intensively, and stock finally went up with the revolution. But that revolution was there for them all to see. Just like in Vietnam, everything is there to see, but you don't do it. I got called up to, would I go to Vietnam to be the manager of the people's, rehabilitation program, pacification program of the Vietnam people, and I report directly to Ambassador Lodge. Well, it was so politically labeled, this inquiry to be, from a friend of mine down there. I called Leo. I said, Leo, look at this. What am I going to do? They're asking me to go of all places to Vietnam, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't work for the Lodge. I would take this up. What should I do? He said, well, let's regard it as an opportunity. You call Jesse Orlansky was the guy who asked me, and suggest that instead of them hiring you, they hire a little social science study team. And he said, I'll be on it, and we'll get Murph Fields on it. And he had the team all in mind. And I called back, and I felt a blank, total
dead air.
That's not what they were interested in.
Yeah.
They were more interested in sort of thing Charlie Raymond did. Well, so, but no, there was no abrasiveness. It was a wonderful place. Well, too good to be true. So I stayed there 15 years. They, just as Marplan or Interpublic, GE continued to fund my physiological research interests. And they all liked it. They liked the prestige of being the one to discover this or that. And the clients were entertained. And sometimes the stuff was very useful.
Looking at your bibliography, it's a very wide-ranging, extensive bibliography.
Yeah.
It includes your interest in men in space, in medicine, in advertising, evaluation. And I even remember your presidential address was on learning without awareness, or learning, there was some title like that.
Something like that.
In the absence of awareness. So many different subjects.
Yes.
Tell us how these relate, or select any of them that you feel that you particularly were interested in and maybe give us a little bit of a connection between public opinion work and some of these interests.
Well, all right. The unifying theme in terms of objectives is that I was always trying to be a proper student of Gardner Murphy. I don't know if you know the name. He was chairman of the psych department. And we in the department used to think he was God. Gardner Murphy, great man, God. And looking back, I think he was God. And I think many people who were students of his will agree, say, yes, I think he really was God. He was wonderful as a lecturer, as a person. And so to go out into the world and be a psychologist for whatever problems came up, you know, and whether you sit down with educators or militarists, you were a psychologist, you had to show what a psychologist could do. So I always liked variety. I didn't want to stay in the same thing each time. Some of the jobs I had so much variety within them, the GE job, that I stayed. And there were always things to fascinate me, and I always had my own budgets to play with. Now, the project that I think comes closest to marrying psychology and public opinion research was the stuff I did on involvement. The high involvement responses involve attitude change before behavior. Low involvement responses can involve behavioral change with or later attitude change. Of great interest to the advertising world, advertising products, what kind of products. Yeah. And what your situation was. So you were defining a situation with the use of psychological concepts, and then using a few questions on a mass public opinion basis to tease out the equivalence in public opinion research. Now, that was kind of expensive, and I was moving out of that field after a while. But that was the best stuff, I think, the place where you would integrate the human being, period, not defining him by this technique or that technique, but how does the human being react to this stimulus, and then enmeshing that in a follow-up study of large-scale public opinion results. And some of the key questions I used were, what were you thinking or feeling while you were watching the commercial, or while you heard someone say, black people are so-and-so, and that's where the involvement part came. And the high involvement responses were so different from the low involvement responses, and no one seemed to know or care or recognize that difference. So you had to go in and find out what kind of situation you had, and then to see what public opinion tools, if any, would apply. And I maintained contact with Hartley for many years on that. And the editor of POQ, I don't know if he's the same editor, tall fellow. He told me once that my article on involvement, which was the presidential address, is the most frequently requested reprint.
Really?
And I thought it would be Joe Clapper's, the one he did on mass communication. He said, no, yours is way up there. I thought that was nice. Well, that will be reprinted in this book that may come out this year. So where are we now? That's my answer to the psychology and public opinion research overlap. Some public opinion analysts would be more interested in that than others. I mean, a Cantrell or a Nate Maccabee or even a Field would be interested in those things too. but they were people who had a professional background in one of the human behavioral sciences. When I first met Cantrell, I didn't think of him as a public opinion researcher. He was a social psychologist. Right. I imagine he thought of himself that way, too. So,
I'm trying to think of the acceleration and the changes in our field over the years, and the things that I jotted down to jog our memories are the what seems to me to be an increasing, huge impact of technology on the way we practice our public opinion research, on the increasing stimulus for fast results, for overnights, for things not as much analyzed as compiled so that people can talk about them. And melded with those things, the public awareness of our field in a way that we just haven't had before. And I remember how startled I was when I heard, like, ordinary folk talk about focus groups. What do you mean, focus groups? And now people are accustomed to the some statement of statistical confidence and the confidence limits in polling results without understanding at all what sampling is about. I wonder if those things have ever collided or come together in your mind and what you think about what's happening these days.
Well, it certainly came up on the basis of standards evaluation, because those things people were always monkeying with, the speed of reporting, the precision of reporting, and things go very fast when you need data quickly. I was asked by the M&M Mars company to evaluate their pre-testing facility, which they had just built, for fast evaluation of commercial. So I had something to do with the original design of that kind of facility, so they asked me would I take a look at it, and I did, and I sent back a 4-page letter with about 67 different technological flaws, simple ones. For instance, I was supposed to build a light, tight laboratory on wheels, trucking it around to take this laboratory. Light, tight. So I walk into the laboratory. I see a light under the door. I said, see that? It's supposed to be light, tight, right? Oh, yeah, well, no, yeah. The contract says light, tight, light, tight. Or in movement research, they would report this applied physiology company jitter in the data, suggesting that the eye was moving jittery. And I said, show me a power supply. They were running the machines in the truck off their regular power supply. I said, well, there's a vibration in the power supply, and that's the jitter. What you have to do is get a donkey engine, where all the power comes from an outside donkey engine that makes the electricity, and it comes in quiet. So a whole list of things like that. And that's been the physiological research has had a terrible reputation over the years because there's been so much chicanery in it. As far as the public opinion research, well, thoughtless, rushing into print without looking at the problem or doing any pilot studies or any depth qualitative stuff before you jump into the quantitative. Yes, people are very familiar with it, and much of their familiarity is based on resentment and hostility, and pretty soon no one will respond to public opinion research questions anymore. I mean, that's been it. You know, a lot of things creep into public awareness through comics, funny television programs, and and the refusal rate in opinion research is in that area now where it's a joke. It's a joke about public opinion research. Well, so technology. Yes, people are fond of technology, but I think that some of the new methods of recording are fine. You know, the computer-assisted recording of data. although I knocked the company out because it said we were computer-assisted, and what it meant was they had a pencil and paper, and the questions that the interviewees were listed on a computer, but then they give the answer on a pencil and paper thing. So that stopped. And some of these were big projects. This one with the computer-assisted, an advertising company was going to set up a worldwide group of these trucks, with these laboratories inside. The clients were lined up, the biggest clients, and the biggest senior public advertising research people who knew it was a hoax. Now, I'm ashamed to say that one of our icons in the public opinion research field was also involved in something like this sort. You wouldn't believe it. I won't tell you who it is, but he did a survey for advertiser, and he showed that before and after the campaign, the exposed yeses or favorable responses went up from 30 to 35%. Marvelous. I said, where's the control group? Oh, we don't give them that. The control group, 30 to 35%. No difference. And this was a major figure in our business. And but it's anonymous, so I'll tell it. They want to know who, I'll tell them where the bodies are lying. They don't want to know that, where the bodies are buried. So overall, I think I felt that if you balance the professional and scientific assets of public opinion research against the commercial and the chicanery and the deceptions, sometimes which lead to wars, I felt that in the public opinion research field, the professional was outweighed by the commercial
other interests,
or the biases. People wanted certain results. And I was happy to know that in my little laboratory, I was at least turning out some research that was replicable and which would be published in any scientific publication. That's why I've got a lot of reprints there. I always made it a point, if I could, to have the thing published as a backup in case there was any argument. I said, let's see your data. Here's my data. So, of course, there were wonderful people in our field, too, scientifically organized. Eric Marder, for instance. So I never considered myself a public opinion analyst when I felt peculiar being president of AAPOR, but in those days there were so many social issues involved with AAPOR that I felt okay. And but nowadays, I'm just a psychologist. And as Gardner Murphy proposed with his students at City College, we went out into the world and did good. And that was the whole idea.
It is the whole idea. And I was going to ask you a real heavy question, and that is, we're doing this for posterity.
Yeah.
And what would you like posterity to take away from it when they have absorbed this discussion?
The old limerick, I'll get it wrong, but you 6 honest serving men. Their names are who and what and when.
Okay.
And so forth. And be skeptical. And ask all the questions, all of them. That's hard to do. Ask Bush or Cheney or any of them. So that's not a hard question.
Well, it brings us back to the verities of our field. Our field could be said to consist of some difficult, but also some simplistic, important matters.
Oh, yes.
I remember Gallup's constant preoccupation was with that question. Now, more recently, researchers who focused on cognitive psychology have shown all kinds of things that go on in the dynamics of an interview, but still some of these simplistic things are still there and still prominent, still
yes,
important.
They are. And some of the people running them are still honest serving men.
Absolutely.
We know who they are.
And
the other ones, watch out.
the other ones will be unmentioned.
Yeah.
Anything else, Herb?
I don't think so.
It's a great discussion. I mean, I think you. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, you've really left us with a lot.
My daughter went with me to AAPOR one year. I don't know whether she was 14 or 15. But while she was there, we were having dinner. She said, I have a date tonight, Daddy. A date? This is at the AAPOR banquet. And there's this fellow from Washington who was with the National Association of Broadcasters. He was then a tall, blonde fellow.
Al Gal?
No.
No.
He was more
NAB guy. I remember who it is, but I don't.
Blonde, good-looking. No. Anyway, they had a date that evening, and he said to me later, he said, I don't know if you remember, but after I took Laura to her room, I came back to the balcony overlooking where you were visiting with other people, and I wanted to be sure that you saw that I was back at this time, and so forth. I thought that was very sweet. So, well, is that
Indeed.
it?
Thank you. That was great.
I think it was great. Yeah, it was really, really good. Very, very useful
Interesting to me
and
too. I
different.
didn't know what was going to come out.
And different.
I know. I didn't tell you about my Air Force career. That's another story.
Oh, you can leave a little bit of it here if you want.
Good. You want to talk a little bit?
Well,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
all right.
Roll them.
Is it on?
Yeah.
It's on now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, when you say, how did it all happen and where did it begin? Actually, it began before I was born, because my father came back from World War I in France, where he was with the Air Force, and I was born a couple of years later, or 9 months later, I don't know. And my mother died then, and my father took me with him for company over the years, because his wife was dead and he didn't remarry so much later. And between his stories and photograph albums and our Sunday visits to nearby airfields and being introduced to famous people in aviation and having their permission to climb around in their airplanes and sit at the controls, by the time I was 9, I was building my own home apparatus to teach me to fly with broomsticks and whatever. And I was planned to be an Air Force pilot and continue the war, World War I, and shoot down German Fokkers and albatrosses. And so I was the only boy I knew in my world who knew what he was going to do and who was going to do something that nobody else was. I didn't realize it was that. I thought why I did was to everybody be a fighter pilot. So when I think I may have covered this, when I started to prepare for my last year of high school, I went down to the Air Force recruiting station. They said you have to have 2 years to get in, and then I went to City College. And while I was at City College, I not only discovered psychology, but I learned to fly. That's something you don't get at many municipal colleges. President Roosevelt had said, we need 50,000 new pilots. The Air Force wasn't interested because he implied that they would be trained by somebody else. They had their own turf. So they set up civilian pilot training programs all over the United States, supervised or subcontracted through colleges to local airfields. And they'd ask people to volunteer and sign up. And when I first heard about it, I almost ran my legs off trying to be the first one to sign up. But then I realized no one was behind me. I was the only one from City College who volunteered, although there were some from Brooklyn College and from Queens. There were a total of 6, I think, in the entire So I used to go out to Mineola, Long Island, Roosevelt Field, hangar number 5, Rappaport and Matthews, twice a week, 6 a.m. from New York. I'd commute. And I'd still be back to make a 10 o'clock class at college. So I learned to fly. And Flanagan, who ran the Air Force psychology program, asked Murphy, did he have any suggestions for staff? And Murphy, knowing that I knew how to fly, was the only one in the student body, said, here's a good psychology student who knows how to fly. So I joined the Air Force Psychological Branch, Office of the Air Surgeon, Headquarters USAAF. And I spent 4 years,
Is that a Flanagan's program? Hmm? Was that Flanagan's program?
Yeah. And spent 4 years there. I know what I forgot to mention. You didn't ask me. What are your post-war plans? Or what comes next, Herb, after all this? And I have a plan, and I'm beginning to collect materials for it. It's something I feel that I owe to my father, who in a sense taught me about flying. I mean, he commented when I was a little kid about physiological changes in the brain due to sound and vibrations, and he got me interested in physiology. Well, anyhow, the Air Force, through our combined efforts, which were massive, 600 psychologists, jillions of dollars, millions of hours of psychological testing, and the electronic machines were going like crazy. You have a room of 60 guys in here on Friedens and Monroes and another 60 there, because you didn't have computers, so you had calculating machines. And the washout rate, that is the first stage of flight training, is your basic training. You fly Piper Cubs, and you learn to fly, then you go on to more advanced aircraft. When we first started, we had 87% washout. Failed. Can't do that. And some of the people who failed got killed, in accidents, training accidents. And so we developed these scores with a massive statistical effort, and we brought the rate down to 10%. So it worked. Stuart Chase, in his book, The Proper Study of Mankind, says this was the most astonishing achievement of the applied social sciences.
That is, you developed predictors for failure and success?
Yes.
Is that what you did?
Yes, although careful about the word predictors. Into the pot, we put 2 days of psychological tests, paper and pencil tests. We also put into a day and a half of psychomotor tests, reaction time and all that sort of stuff. And then we took the data and compared it to a very beautiful and simple criterion, pass-fail. Pass-fail by serial correlation. What could be simpler than that at the other ends of the equation? But what about we didn't use test scores in these things. We used item analysis. If we had a Bernward personality inventory, total scores you can use. But you can also take each individual question. We ran everything against those by serial correlations. And we came up with, 67 things which taken together would give you these immense high predictors.